Hey guys, welcome back to the Bill and Rae Show. Thanks for stopping by. I'm going to make another marble out here in the torch shop today, and I'm going to start out making a little ribbon cane. And the basic build of this one is going to be pretty simple. So let's start out with the ribbon cane. One of my favorite things to do. And we're going to make the base of this is going to be experimental green. So the first step I want to do is make a little lollipop of color. And I'm going to use my little mashers to make my little lollipop. So I'm going to let this fall back on itself and condense a little bit. Now because this is going to be deep encased basically inside the marble, I don't want very much of this glass. This is not totally compatible color to put inside a marble. So we're just going to start off with a little gather and press that out flat. You can use the paddle in your graphite pad, whatever you want to do to get a flat end, but that little mashing tool does a good job. So what I want is this to be half, one side's going to be silver fumed, but the other side I don't want silver fumed. So what we're going to do is add clear right out the gate to one side here. So, got to build up a gather of clear here, and then we're going to drop this down. Hope everyone is doing well out there. We've got a beautiful spring day here. The sun is shining, the skies are blue. Kind of sore from doing yard work the last couple days. Been out in the yard doing lots of work. So hopefully I can get through this marble today. Alright, got a big dollop of clear, drop that on. Go ahead and kind of squeeze this in. I got it kind of lopsided. Doesn't have to be too pretty. Don't get too obsessed with this stage. Okay, so this side I want silver fume. So drop down to a little softer flame, still kind of rich flame. Come out here off the tip a little bit. A little bit of silver. Back to a bigger flame and drop some clear on the other side. Because we've had a pretty mild winter this year, we've got the grass growing dense and green, and it's a little different looking than usual. Usually the weeds and dandelions are taken off by now, but we've got a lot of grass. Kind of an interesting change up. So we'll drop in some clear. Squeeze that out. So now we've got this edge with clear, and it's kind of hard to get at. So you got all these little ridges, little valleys in there. So for now, we're going to just keep adding some clear. And we'll just kind of let some heat do its trick in here. And it will melt that down and push that edge out, might appear. Okay, options at this point. You could twist this out in this configuration, or you could bury that edge with more clear. Kind of hard to get that edge right up against the color rod as it gets awful floppy. Okay, or we could do a little experiment at this point and cover up one side. Give another asymmetry to it. So at this point, I'm going to do a handle. And cut loose this color rod. Again, just try and let the heat do its thing. See if we can even out this asymmetry. Attach another handle. So when we start out in the torch shop in the morning, I do quite a bit of setup, laying out some glass, pulling out some stringers, and just trying to chill down. Because once we get going with this, it's just going to keep on going until we're done. So it's always a little hard to just hit the record button and say, okay, we're going to do it. So it takes some focus and some centering, and sometimes you need a little bit of ritual stretching or warm up. Of course, part of the warm up to me is I've already been doing a little bit of glass work, just getting things ready. But you have to kind of get into the zone. Right now, just trying to get the right heat coverage. I'm getting pretty thin on my handle on the left side. So I'm trying to pull this out a little bit more of a football, giving it a little twist. And this guy is pretty little, so usually I try and kind of barrel it up. Let it kind of solidify, and then I can start working out the end. But this handle is really thin now, so I'm going to condense this back in. Let that set up a little bit. Okay, this green presents itself as kind of this variegated, stripy color, so hopefully that's what it's doing. Now the trick is to pull this out to a good length. It'll accomplish what I want to do when I get to that phase of the marble build. Try and make something kind of consistent twist, consistent diameter. Kind of hard to do on such a small little bit. Not much room to get into a rhythm there. Okay, and then we'll cut off where it starts looking a little funky. Alright, there's our decorative piece for the core. Just let this hang out here and dry off and cool down. Alrighty. Well, that's our first little task. See if we can find my coffee mug here. What do we got here? We got hecklefish. I don't know if any of you guys see the Y Files. Interesting YouTube channel. AJ and his sidekick Hecklefish. Kind of fun. We do a lot of crazy stories. Alright, what are we doing? We're jumping into our large main rod that we're going to build our marble with. We've got a rough cut-off end here we need to clean up. We got a line across here from kind of some cracking going on. So we need to make sure we dig out any of that kind of stuff. It might go pretty deep. So we might just need to get rid of this whole end. Usually don't get quite this crazy at cleaning off the end, but do what you gotta do. So it's handy. I've got these little tweezers, little 7-inch stainless steel tweezers. But it's nice to have something bigger when things get large or hot. You need to stay away from it. Okay, we're going to skim off some surface glass. And make sure we have good, clear, clean glass at the center of our marble. So we're going to let this fall back on itself and get our first gather. So thank you guys so much for hanging out watching some of these videos. Got quite a few of them up on YouTube now, going back quite a little ways, last 2 years. Take a moment to thank our sponsor once again, Epicwater filters. There's a link in the description below if you're interested in cleaning up your drinking water or saving some money from buying bottled water. It's super easy to have your own water filter. We just have the pitcher in the refrigerator, and we have pretty clean well water as it is, but it's nice to have some drinking water that you're confident is free of all of our nasty chemistry in the modern world. Plus, there's some natural things like arsenic in our water that it's a good thing to get rid of that. So check it out if you like. Help out the channel if you purchase something off the site. Okay, still kind of building up this gather. This zone right around this area tends to collect the surface scummy glass. So I keep kind of digging it like that zone there. If you look close when you're torching glass, you can actually see that surface doesn't look quite right. Kind of glows a different way. And anything that glows bright, you definitely want to get rid of. And then in the process of doing this, I tend to add little fizzy spots, because when you have a little sharp tail in the flame, the glass has a tendency to boil. So you have to get rid of those too. Alright, got kind of mesmerized by that process. I got plenty of glass here to start. Just kind of get this to round up a little. Start rolling this on a marver plate. Let that core temperature cool down. Grab our paddle and start shaping up. Let's see, I'll switch this over. Start kind of drawing out, sharpening the point of our cone interior. Kind of angle this down and into the flame and kind of keep coaxing this down. Okay, for this first step, we want some real estate to work with, so we kind of have this long taper. And we don't care about how sharp the point is. Doesn't need to be particularly sharp at this stage. Flame polish that a little bit. Oops, sorry. Sometimes when I want the, the torch to calm down, I think the red max is running and hit the switch to throttle it down, but kind of in the opposite mode there. All right, we're going to start out with gold. So we need to set our flame down here. A little sharp, a little oxidizing. And introduce our gold fuming rod slowly. Get it warmed up. Alright, looking good. I'm going to kind of roll that rod onto the marver and try and make sure that the spot of gold doesn't submarine in there too much. Alright, we need some lines in here. We're going to just do vertical lines at this point. Flip up my shades. I'm just working clear glass. I don't want such dark lenses. Trying to keep the fume layer out of the direct torch flame. Okay, we draw this initial pattern, leaving some gaps, then we'll come back in and add another line in between. It doesn't go all the way up to the tip. Alrighty. Now we need big fire. push in those tail ends so they don't burn and boil too much. Now we're burning out the excess gold in between the clear lines. Requires some fairly intense flame to do that process. I put down quite a bit of gold there, so I need to really heat this up pretty hard to get that fuming to burn out in between. Okay, once we've got that kind of burned out, actually want at this point to get a little bit of a twist. So as I'm doing this, shaping up the cone, I've got that glass pretty hot so I can drag it. Okay, now at this point, I don't have to right now, but I'm going to sharpen this tip. I'm going to grab a bit, get it out of the flame, pull and rotate. All right. We're getting going. And now comes our color part. Let's go back to overhead. Sometimes a little challenging being the glass worker and the producer and the director and the editor and everything. Okay, so I'm going to wind this on here. Come up close to the other previous line, but keep a little distance. So I'm trying to be kind of neutral, just trying to lay this down without bunching it up or pulling it out. Usually about now I'm kind of stressing if I have enough ribbon cane to complete this pattern or not. As the diameter gets smaller, you get more rotations. So the amount of ribbon cane consumes. We're going to get right down to the wire here. All right, well that worked out. Kind of lucked out there. So we need to heat that and melt all that in. This kind of stage, you just want the glass to do its own thing. Just keep rotating, try and focus the heat more on the heavy end than the tip. The tip is already melted in. And you have the mass of glass underneath what you're trying to melt in. It's taking up a lot of heat. So this gives us kind of a rough shape. Now we're kind of back to being a little bit of a sloppy conical shape, but that's okay. A lot of this is rotation and angling. I'm kind of angling it up now. And then we just gotta give it some rotation and let it settle down. Some stages like this, you gotta get the core cooled down enough to be stable before you can really work on the surface. What's the surface now, of course, is inside the marble, but you get asked all the time, how do you get that stuff inside there? It's like, well, it was always on the surface at some point. If you're looking into clear glass where you've built up layers, all those layers were up on the top at some point. But they eventually look as if they were buried in there magically. Okay, now we can heat up the outside and be kind of gently bringing a little focus to this angle. A little sculpting with rotation and paddle. Again, it's okay to get, for my purposes, to get a little more rotation there. Okay, you're going to do another set of fumed lines behind this. And that's going to be a combination of gold and silver. Okay, so I'm going to start off with gold and then add silver. So we've got to get back to our little sharp flame. See if we can coax our gold to come out and fume again. I think we just lost it. Okay, that's why you have a backup. Try and warm this up. So trying to just introduce that little spot of gold into the flame. Sometimes when you have these multiple layers, it's a little hard to tell how much fume you're putting down. So then we're going to go to a softer flame with the silver. Don't want a lot of silver here, but try and do just a little bit. Kind of changes the fume color palette. All right, then we're going to do a similar set of lines. The ones on the inside are already twisted, so adding straight lines will now make a contrasting pattern. Pretty similar setup. Draw some spaced out lines and then draw a line in between. All right. And repeat, we're going to knock down those little high spots. So again, we kind of melt in the clear lines and then hopefully burning out the fume in between. So a backing like this where you have these lines, you also get some dimensional effects going on to that ribbon cane. It's subtle, but if you didn't have this layer, it would look different. That's all I can really say. Can't say whether it would look good, bad, or indifferent, but it would be different. So again, kind of sharpening up our cone shape. And I think we'll sharpen it up a little at this stage. So kind of heat that end up, grab a hold, and just pull outside of the flame. Okay, next up, frit. Got some blue spruce, small frit. So heat up our piece of glass. I'm going to get it on here at a bit of an angle. So the angled part of the cone is kind of more flush to the torch, and I'm kind of focusing the heat on the heavy end. So the tip is going to get plenty hot on its own. Okay, get it nice glowing hot. Drop it into the frit. Try and get kind of an even coat on everything. I'm going to get this frit out of here. It's sitting underneath there, it gets hot, hot, hot. Okay, set that aside. So start out in the outer reaches here of the flame. Just kind of gently, gently, got a big huge flame, but trying to be kind of gentle on that color. As it heats up, we can bring it in closer. Alright, we'll just do a little marbling. Just make sure all that glass is settled down. And we are ready for our base color coat, which is just going to be jet black today. Gonna hide this underneath the color frit. So the backing color here, this black, I've got a bunch of random ends of stringers. This is a good way to kind of use them up. I tag a bunch of those together and come up with kind of a oddball stringer that wouldn't really look the best for nice line work, but in this case we're just building up a layer. So sometimes you can kind of tag glass together, stringers in particular, on the fly. Again, because this is not involving any detailed pattern or anything that's too visible. Frankly, it's not going to be that visible in the finished piece. Just just gives a separation between the inside artwork and the outside. Okay, and I'll just save that little guy or toss it. Come back and finish in between some of these last lines. It's a little trickier when you get down here to the end, so you don't really want to overheat things. But you really want to preserve that vanishing point of the vortex effect on the inside. Okay, I think I got it pretty well coated here. I look for thin areas, places I might have left the gap. Use a little pressure here to push it in. Okay. Hopefully we got this pretty well sealed up at the far end. Okay, now I usually try and fume this base layer on the back side to give some effect. I'm going to go back to, maybe do gold or silver, but I think we'll just do silver. Go back to our little bit softer flame. And instead of sitting on those candles, we'll move out a little bit. I kind of lost where my silver was. It tends to submarine as well. Okay, well, Got something on there. Alright, done with our little sticks, done with our black. Okay, one thing that leads to another. Alright, now. There's lots of fire. I like the headphones playing some music, kind of blots out the noise to a large degree of the torch and the fan, and puts me in a mindset where I just kind of be a little bit more in the zone. Because every step along the way, some of these seem pretty mundane, not much going on here, but every step is important. There's always little details, little subtle things happening that have to maintain awareness. And the big thing here is just trying to enjoy the work, enjoy the day, be in a happy place. Whether it's glasswork or any other artwork, if you're in a good place mentally, emotionally, it's a lot easier to produce good work. And glasswork, well, it's true of any artwork, I guess, but because you make so many individual pieces, I never know how this is going to turn out exactly. I don't know who's going to really like it, or who's going to pass. So there's a lot of mysterious connections, because whatever I'm doing right now is connecting to some human being that's going to hold this in their hands someday, probably in the not too distant future. And this piece is going to be around for a long time. Glass is very durable. It's not going to fade away. I don't believe the colors are going to change much, like paintings or something, photographs. It's kind of literally set in stone. You're working with molten rocks, if you like. You're playing with lava. So there's something kind of primordial about the fire and the elements that bring color to the glass. The silica the glass is made out of is predominant elements in the surface crust of the earth. So some of these mundane steps is kind of a good time to process, but what's it all about? What's the point? What's the goal? As we come up here to the edge of the color, I don't really want to go over that edge. Just going to leave that color line as a defining line. very strange effects go on with glass between color and clear. Okay, so we left this end open, and we left this end exposing just a sliver of color. So if we hit it right, kind of left the color alone on both sides. We'll heat that first layer in. Okay, then we're going to continue to fill in between these two endpoints. But now with clear on clear, we can be more loosey-goose, whatever, lay down glass however you like. Get down here to a short stick, and that big fire is a bit much. So this step will have quite a bearing on how big the marble is and what the interior vortex is like. So it can look all kind of messy and sloppy and all over the place, and then we're just going to let this heat up and melt in. This is pretty lopsided though, right here at this end. I'm getting pretty warm now. Surprised. It was chilly this morning and it's still fairly early in the day, but I'm warming up. So this is just a wait and see here. Keep heating. Let it create its own rounding effect. So I try and avoid tooling. You'll see in some of these steps, I use the paddle and I use the marble plates for certain things, but I'm trying to avoid using the marble mold. Just a lot of different angles. Rotations pretty much stay the same. You just want to keep a steady rotation. The attachment point is not that hot, so it's not literally flopping around if I stop rotating. You just want the heat to build up evenly. And it starts kind of condensing, changing shape of that interior cone a little bit here. And another one of these cycles where you throw a lot of heat into it, get it to change shape. And we're going to come out of the heat. We're going to keep rotating. We're going to wait for all that to cool down. My little soup can roller, every once in a while I get comments about this. It's just kind of a soup can with a couple dents pushed into the sides, and it's filled with a bunch of scrap metal, so it stays put pretty good. But I can still move it around. I can come up at an angle and still have it helping to hold things. Come down to marble, whatever. Doesn't take up a lot of space on the bench. All right. Now we're down to our color, and you can just leave your piece sitting there once it's not flopping around. If you have to step away from the bench for a minute or anything. Okay, now we're going to lay down some color lines. I'm going to define that rim. Break away and give some room for 2 more color lines. Okay, we've got 2 other colors here. I think I'll go with the Peacock first. And the rod and the stringer, this looks like a pretty dark color that usually on a surface pattern will be a pretty blue. So we'll just follow around the last line I put down and try not to run up against it too much. And just a little sliver of clear in between. Alright, the last one is a translucent color. This is Dark Amethyst. Not something I would use on the back side generally, but I thought I'd give it a go. And you have a kind of a wide gap to fill. I'm pressing into the piece. Depending on how thick your stringer is, you can kind of adjust how much glass you're putting down by either dragging or pushing. And we're just kind of letting it run sort of neutral, I would consider. You know, neutral is if the linear inches of stringer are the same as the inches of line that were put down in the glass. Alright, now I need to heat that stuff in. It's going to get pretty bright, so we'll drop our shades. Anybody out there wondering, these are just mirrored sunglasses, flip-on shades, nothing fancy. It works for me in the scale of work that I do. For bigger torches or bigger work, this probably would not be adequate at all. But I also have reader glasses inside my titanium glasses. So there's actually 3 layers that are blocking UV and heat. Okay, once those are pretty well settled down, now it's kind of floppy, so it needs to cool down for a minute. This is always a little tricky, getting to the right stage before doing the next step. It's also a little tricky to get the torch adjusted the way I want. Okay, I think I got control over this. I'll flash some heat onto our tungsten pick. And we'll kind of move back and forth and heat up a zone. Come in here with the pick. Try and just very slowly move through that color layer. This is a balancing act to get the right amount of heat ahead of where you're going to rake. And it always starts, I clean off the tip every time before I do this, and when you start out, it tends to be a little bit more problematic, but once you've got kind of a little glob of glass on the tip there, it tends to work better. Except for that little tear that I'm leaving there. Okay, and again we have to kind of slowly come out to this end. Okay. And usually, often is the case, we've got a couple little troublesome areas that I need to try and drag the glass together. And those will make kind of little messy zones, but not too bad. And another thing that will develop sometimes at this phase is bubbles. And any of those we can find, we can hopefully pop those and just kind of push that in just this touch and just let that heat close it back together. Okay, a little off axis, but not too bad. Sometimes, in this one in particular, I can get some little bit of glimpses through that layer to the underlying base. So effectively the glass rod in my left hand becomes kind of like a puntee. So by heating up the connection, you loosen it up and going to make adjustments. Also just getting pretty floppy at this point. The whole mass is pretty hot. Looks like I got another bubble of some sort on the tip. This gets into definitely some controlled chaos here. So when it gets just too wild, we just got to get out of the fire and settle down for a sec. Okay. Another one of these. Sometimes if you can just pop that bubble and then let the heat collapse things back together, that works pretty well. Alright, our first introduction to the marble mold. This is a 2-inch. And we don't want to do a whole lot here, just get some general rounding and centering. Little by little. You gotta let things stabilize enough to maintain control, otherwise you're just going crazy. Alright, our first puntee. I do just a full-on kind of fused connection there. I'll be able to hang on to this thing. So we're going to focus this zone that I'm heating right now is kind of a trashy zone. There's fuming, it's burning out. It's all that, when it's wobbling around, is creating stress in the glass, and that shows up mostly on the surface, and you get all this stressed out glass that can start behaving differently, enough differently to be optically apparent. So we want to get rid of that glass eventually. But right now the aim is to take that glass and get it to push out see in a minute, become more of a bulge around that line between the clear and the color. got it angled a little bit. The glass all looks nice and clear right now, but that surface is definitely distressed. So generally these marbles, it's about half of it is clear and half of it is color. So at this point, it looks like, well, we're really close to having a complete marble, and you could, but the window would be kind of tight. So I prefer to build up quite a bit of a clear lens on these. But again, that's totally an artistic judgment call as to what you want, and then it's kind of a call on your torch and setup and how many of these you've made, I guess, and where you want to call it good and move on. You should also see what's happening right now is that dividing line between the color and the clear is expanding. Power of video, if you just back up a couple minutes, you'll see it's quite a different diameter. So I actually kind of want to emphasize or exaggerate that. I'll go back to focusing on our main rod that we're just feeding in glass at this point, building up more bulk. So I'm just allowing the weight of the rod on an incline to kind of push in. I'm trying to keep just in that zone that's melting. This phase gets a little taxing on my arms after all the yard work. Doing okay, but it's a little tiring no matter what. Okay, and once we've got quite a bit going on there, then we can heat up the area, and then I've got my constriction roller right out here. And I'll just kind of let the weight just sit on there. The right hand I'm holding very loose. The left hand on the solid rod is pushing down. Heating up on the marble side. Back in here with a little bit of force. You don't want any force on your punty connection, so you just let that stay gentle. Pull it apart just a bit to where it's thin. You don't have to go through all that. I used to just run it on the edge of the elm arbor. There's a lot of different ways you can pull off that disconnect. Alright, so now we're going to focus on this zone. It's messed up. So two things. This also cleans up the edge. to kind of graze against that colored area. Peel a little bit. Each of these steps you gotta get it hot, hot, hot. You don't want to be forcing it or yanking around on the glass too hard. And if your tweezers are sticking to the glass, it helps to just keep them in the water until you're ready to use them. If they're wet, it helps. And when I do that, I drop out of the flame, come back up to the flame and cut it loose. Now I come around to where we started. We want to carefully pull out a little bit, maybe tuck it in with the tweezers just a touch. Okay, then we just continue skimming, kind of indiscriminately, just taking a layer off. So the surface of the glass rods are always, well, color rods as well, but you just don't notice it. It's always a little different. If you went down, look at the material chemistry, would actually be a little bit different on the surface than in the interior. And then when you're torching glass, all that yellow flare that these glasses block out, it's mostly sodium. It's burning out. So the chemistry of your glass is changing the longer you're sitting in the flame. Change this around. Change the angle of attack here. Kind of think of this as sanding wood, cabinet project or something, and trying to get that surface to be nice and pretty. Just exposing the underlying material that's cleaner. again, anything you see that looks, if it looks weird in the flame, if it's bright spots or speckles or something, we need to get rid of it. And it's also at this point you could adjust the overall amount of glass if it seems like it's still a bit heavy there. Alright, well, believe it or not, we're making progress. Now we just got to get this thing round. So the ends have to come in and the circumference in the middle has to expand out a little bit. So right now the clear glass will move pretty easily. You just can use a little focused heat and angles. It'll cooperate pretty well. And then I also like to do some rotations. I'm going to spin this up. At various points, this is one thing I really like about having an Elmar over here. You can run that it really helps to keep our circular shape. But it's also flattening out the area that needs to expand a larger diameter, so you don't want to get too crazy with that. So now I'm going to drop this into this larger 3-inch mold. Or 2.5-inch mold, I can't remember. So I'm going to do a lot of trips into marble molds, and you want to do it relatively quickly because it's losing a lot of heat when you're doing that. So that actually is pretty much the shape of the clear lens side. The troublesome, time-consuming is the other side. So let's go ahead and swap punties here. I tend to just kind of rush along through this, but you really should kind of give it a little bit of time to lose some core heat, because that lens shape is practically a completed shape. And then I flame cut off my bunties here. And we'll clean up this end. Just hit it on the edge there. Now this part only seems to take more time than I think it should. This doesn't like to move as easily, and we don't want to disturb our interior design and geometry of the vortex. So we want to try and keep this from getting too aggressive with tools. It's one thing I like about this fast rotation is that it starts pulling a lot of glass around on its own. Now your puntee has to be pretty much on center here for this to work in fast rotations. As long as your puntee's connection is stable, you can really slow down your rotations and dump a lot more heat into the glass. Alright, at some point the whole marble is getting pretty warm, pretty willing to move. So again, we don't want to spend much time in these marble molds, but we can do a little bit. And at this point I'm using some pressure. Now it's this funny little dip on the color side. I have to keep fiddling around to get rid of that. That seems a little counterintuitive, but sometimes you want to hold it more vertical. And I push-pull that glass around. You have to kind of gauge that amount of pressure you can put on your puntee. For one, the puntee rod like this, once you start horsing around with it, you want to make sure that that's just a section of a factory rod. You don't want it to be a spliced, something that has heat-affected zones that you've melted two sticks together. And make sure that's just a clean. This is 8mm. Works well for this size marble. I have had them break when I'm horsing around like this. So it's coming together, but it's still that one little zone. It's just really stubborn. My hands are cooking. Start looking more at the reflections. See whether you're getting there. Starts really moving slow at this stage. A little more controlled chaos. Okay, watching the reflections, pretty close. In this pass, we'll try and just do some faster rotations without too much pressure. Use a little pressure there to get back on center. So then we're going to lose some core heat. So we'll just keep running this in the marble mold and then when we come in here, this is more like a flame polish type of deal. And hopefully clear some of those little ripples and artifacts that happen in the marble mold. That's looking pretty good. So I think we can leave this backside alone now. Make sure we get a really good super soak. Come out of the flame and keep rotating. Don't ever stop rotating. Well, in some sense, this is a fairly basic Vortex marble with a deep well. And I can't really tell the color at this stage. But hopefully, get some pretty color in here. Okay, for the last punty, this one is kind of something in between a cold and a hot punty. Okay, we heat the base till it's glowing. Use the tip of our punty until it's glowing and just touch down and give it a little wiggles. Just kind of stress that connection of touch. That process is, it's hard to describe, hard to demonstrate. But you're trying to get something less than a fused connection. And then it's important to dig into this right here and get rid of any of that zone that was connected, which leaves a little flat spot. So then we have to kind of direct our heat and attention to filling that end in. And fortunately, the clear moves a lot easier than the color. So in the home stretch now. Okay, drop into the marble mold from the back side. I'm trying to do rotations in just one direction. So we bring it up to near vertical. And if we did everything right, that should be the majority of steps there to shape it up. But unfortunately, that's some surface mess. So when you're picking out little messy spots, try not to disturb the bulk of the glass too much. Oh, darn it. The torch is throwing some carbon shrapnel. That can happen. So that kind of set things back a step. Sometimes you pick up stuff in the marble mold. Sometimes the torch decides to puke something out. Okay, once the general shape looks good, wait just a moment. Come in here a little faster. That pretty much should complete the shaping, unless I mess things up again. So there'll be some rings, apparently, especially on the very top front face. You'll get some concentric rings from the marble mold. So we do a couple of cycles here. This is just a flame polishing. When you heat up the surface, let it cool down, it'll kind of level itself out. So again, it's like you want to make sure the core of the glass is not so hot that it's moving. You want just the very surface to move. The idea is to kind of throw a lot of heat in a short time. With that gold fume on the first layer, that's got some really nice pink showing up against the ribbon cane. Hopefully that'll hold out. And it dives down into more coppers and greens towards the bottom. Backside looks nice and clean. Alright, I'm going to run one more heat cycle just because. Alright, hopefully we are good to go. Alright, well thank you so much guys for hanging out, watching these videos. If you're still here, good on you. Just a couple of minutes on the video, I'll do a little close-up view of the finished marble. But I have to wait to see that in real time. So at this point we want to cool it down enough to where we drop it into the marble mold to transfer it into the kiln. We don't want it soft enough to cause any marks. Alright, so I got a tweezers wet. It didn't break very easily or cleanly, but well, it broke pretty clean. And we'll just come in here and cook that little spot. And it's all smoothed in. Another finishing touch that you don't want to rush through this. That looks pretty good. Awesome guys, thanks so much for being here. Keeps me going, keeps me out of trouble. It's in the kiln. I can hardly wait to see that tomorrow morning, see what we got. Alright you guys, take care of yourselves. Self-care is very important so that you can take care of those around you. And we will see you on another adventure another day. Check it out.